Alright, so I want to start by just quickly walking through Redshift, the plugin as a whole, and how it integrates into C4D. So there are a few ways to get to the plugin. And let's start off with the menu up here. I'm just going to pull it out for a second. Through the menu, we'll be able to add all kinds of Redshift objects, lights, camera types, materials, etc. Maybe most importantly, right off the bat, is the render view. And if you want to see the render view explained in a little bit more detail, go ahead and check out the render view section. So I'm going to go ahead and dock the render view by just grabbing the square button and dragging it up above my C4D view. I'll adjust that down a little bit. So this is one way to get to Redshift. So another way is directly in the render settings. If we spin down the drop down, we can select Redshift and access Redshift's render settings. This is where you're going to find things like your sampling controls, AOVs, global illumination, and a handful of other tools that you may need to control that would be classified as render settings. Right, so another way we can get to Redshift is if we have an object and right-click on the object, navigate to Redshift tags, and select Redshift object tag. This is going to expose all the controls the Redshift offers for shape objects. You'll see if I add in a curve here and add the Redshift object tag, the tag will adapt to give me an extra curve tab. And this tag will adapt according to the object that you place it on, with the exception of lights and cameras. If we had a camera in the scene, we would need to use the Redshift camera tag. Additionally, if we go down to our materials pane here, you can see there's a menu of different materials, or more specifically, anything related to the Redshift shader graph. So we'll just go ahead and add a Redshift material. Now, if we double click on our little shader ball icon, you'll see we get a material editor. And this material editor will contain all of the nodes that are within the shader graph. So for example, if I hit edit shader graph, we'll actually see we have two nodes here. We have the Redshift material node, and we have the output node, which will be in all of your materials. And that coincides with our material editor, which describes the output as a dropdown, and the RS material node as a dropdown. And you'll see if I add an extra node into the shader graph, it shows up in the material editor as well. I'm not going to go over the shader graph now. There's actually a separate section for that. So if you want to learn more about the shader graph, just go ahead and hop over to that section. Now, something kind of handy about the material editor is that you'll see we still have the C4D assignment dialog here. So I can take my objects and drag it into the assignment, and that material shows up on our objects, which is kind of a neat carryover. And lastly, if we click the Redshift menu again and hit Preferences, you'll see we have our kind of global preferences for Redshift, where I have things like GPU selection options, your Redshift texture and geometry cache, and a couple other guys you may or may not want to use. All right, thanks for checking out this section, and I'll catch you in the next one.